Let's just start on Warner Brothers for a moment, because it seems they wanted to lean in to Max, which is now branded, and the fact that streaming is actually managing to prove profitable.
Yeah, I mean, the big criticism of all these streaming enterprises has been that they lose money other than Netflix. And David Zaslav, the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, is clearly doing everything he can to turn Max into a profitable service. You know, they're cutting costs in a lot of ways. They've laid off people, and that seems like positive news. The problem, or the cloud looming over all these companies, is that their linear cable networks are declining really quickly. And so investors are still a little bit uncertain whether the growth of the profits on streaming are ever really going to replace what was an incredibly lucrative business model.
It's interesting because in a 24-hour span, Lucas, you had Paramount post that loss and then Warner Brothers posts the profit. What can we discern about the competitive nature of the two when it comes to streaming?
Well, it may depend on sort of where they are in their investment cycle. You know, Paramount, I think, said that this year was going to be its year of peak investment. You know, it wasn't long ago, I think maybe a year and a half, where Paramount was still sort of bragging about how much it was spending because it thought that that's what Wall Street wanted to hear. It had this investor day in early 2022 or its earnings. I forget which one, maybe both. And it just really changed on a dime, you know, around that time a year ago. I think Warner Brothers Discovery has sort of moved into cost-cutting mode more swiftly, partially forced by the merger and those almost always resulting in cost-cutting.
You know, Caroline, the story of the week that Lucas's team and Screen Time have been at the forefront of is the WGA and Hollywood strike, right? That's what we've been talking about.
And really the intersection here of a new type of environment they have to work in. Lucas, the fact that there is a focus on streaming, what that means in terms of recompense for them. And also, yes, I mean, artificial intelligence as being some competitive threat too.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Given the conversation we were just having around profitability and what happens to these companies, the strike should benefit a lot of these companies' bottom line. It's one of the reasons why some of the writers and a lot of industry experts are sort of concerned that this strike is going to go on for a long time, because these companies looking to cut costs will benefit from not spending a bunch of money on new projects. Or, you know, we reported this week that some of the studios are already ceasing to pay some of these writers that they have producer deals with. You know, it feels like the sides are pretty far apart on pay. And they're not even really close on a subject like AI, where the writers want certain projections and the studios feel it's too early to sort of put anything to paper.
Lucas, the last strike was 2007, I believe, right? How long does this one go on? How are talks progressing?
Yeah, I mean, the last one lasted about 100 days. I think the one in the late 80s was longer than that. It set the record. Look, I'm not supposed to make predictions, but nobody I talk to thinks that this one is going to be over anytime soon. It feels as if the studios have already shifted to focusing on the Directors Guild and the Actors Guild, both of which have contracts coming up in the next couple of months. You know, it feels like it's going to stretch into the fall, but of course things could change over the summer.
And Lucas, of course, you report on this from Hollywood, from LA, but our producer was saying how she saw people at the picket lines in New York as she came into work today. I mean, this is, how national in nature does this become?
Well, there are major production hubs certainly in New York. You know, a lot of the late night shows which have already gone off the air are made in New York. And then you have people who work in Atlanta or in New Orleans or in Chicago. I don't know that you're going to have protests in all of those places, especially because the writers are more concentrated in LA and New York. But this has become a pretty global industry. And so even if the Writers Guild only affects writers in the United States, you're going to see people everywhere else governed. You know, I think there were some stories this week about you know, writers in the UK being urged not to cross the picket line and do work with Guild signatories.